You're listening to Musings with Morales, brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.
Welcome to Musings with Morales. It's a great evening. I got a very special guest. We actually had the chance to get to know each other a little bit more over the weekend while celebrating the 15th year anniversary of Dialysis Education Services, where we train technicians and nurses for the hemodialysis field. I guess common friends and common passion brought us together for that. I also saw you in some recent professional gatherings. So I guess it's now, a month into getting to know each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Janet Figueroa,
Yes.
Healthcare leader, entrepreneur, and I'm assuming a storyteller in the short period that we have here, have chatted so far. I've come to grasp that tonight we're going to talk about a lot more than what we normally talk about. Something you shared with me over the weekend that was really, really interesting was like celebrating life. I've grown up in a field that is really plagued by thoughts of mortality, dialysis, right? People who have end-stage kidney failure. There's a lot of focus on when am I going to die? Will I die? How long do I have? Things like this. And I quite often see the difference in people who are looking at that versus I want to live today, seize the moment, right? The health that I do have, let me go out and do with it, write a book, mentor my kids, my grandkids, be the babysitter, just have time of companionship, whatever it might be. So when you talked about celebrating life, and I think the way you said it was celebrating life while we're alive, it really intrigued me. So welcome to the podcast, Janet Figueroa. It's a pleasure to have you here and look forward to the conversation. Let's give her a round of applause.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Such a wonderful podcast, and just seeing you with the other people, and it's just so inspiring, and a lot of amazing stories. So I'm honored that you're having me here as one of them. So.
Well, I got to say that we've been really lucky with the podcast to have those great guests. Some of them that we've known, and some that we've been introduced, like me and you. And there's like this common passion for giving benefit to others from what we've went through. That, again, intrigued me about this conversation tonight. Let's go back, find out about you. What do you do now? How did you get there?
Yeah, so I'm actually a nurse by trade. So I went into nursing school right out of high school. And it's funny because I actually wanted to be a police officer.
Oh, wow. Big difference.
Yeah. And one of my sisters said, no, that's too dangerous. Pick something else. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, and so I don't know how it all kind of happened. I feel like I was just maybe led into it because I kind of just found myself, going to nursing school and just really loving it. And I actually went to nursing school to be a nursery nurse, which is not a thing anymore.
All right. Wait, what do you mean nursery nurse?
Yeah. So like back in the day, you know how they would take all the babies into a room and you would look through the window and there'd be all the babies and the nurses. Mm-hmm. So that used to be a thing where there would be just a nursery nurse and she would take care of the babies. Well, that's what I wanted to do. I just wanted to cuddle babies for a living.
Right. At least you're being straight up about it. It was like you just wanted to cuddle, right?
Yeah.
Have fun with babies.
Absolutely. Yeah. Not the NICU or anything, just literally cuddle babies. Yeah. And then as I was graduating, so this was like 15 plus years ago, they're like, we're introducing this new thing called couplet care, and the mom and the baby are going to be in the same room, and they're going away with nursery. And I was like, oh crap, what do I do now? And so I happened to get an externship at the hospital that I was at in Arizona. I got an externship in the cardiac floor. Okay. And never in a million years did I think that I was going to stay there or that was going to become one of my specialties. But one thing led to another. I ended up being the charge nurse and everything. And so that ended up being my thing. My specialty in the hospital was cardiothoracic step down.
Okay.
So we took care of people that had like open heart surgery and all that. Well, some crazy stuff happened in my personal life where I found myself in a place. I grew up in a very small town in Arizona.
Okay.
And so I found myself in a place where I was like, I just need to get out of here. There was
What's the town, by the way? Because
Prescott.
Okay, yeah.
Have you been there?
Yes, yeah. I mean, I used to do a lot of work in Arizona, so have moved around a bit there.
Yeah. So back in the day, it was very, very small. Like now they have like a Chipotle and everything. And it's like,
I thought it was
Big
Prescott.
deal.
But when I talk to people from Arizona, they're like Prescott and the tomato. Yeah.
Well, so you say Prescott because that's how we know you're not from there.
Yeah, exactly.
So you keep saying it that
that's
way.
what I was pointing out. Yeah.
Yeah. So like we always tell people like, no, that's how you say it. And if you're from there, then you say Prescott.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I grew up in this town, and it was just so small, and we only had one hospital, and so I was getting divorced and going through this huge change in my life, and I had everything. I had the white picket fence, literally. I owned a home, we had cars, we had money in the bank, and both of us had a great career, me and my ex-husband. And I found myself, in a place where I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I went to Hawaii to talk with one of my friends to see, like, what should I do? And she said, how about travel nursing?
Okay.
And I was like, that's crazy. And she's like, well, this life is crazy. And so I was like, okay. So I went, and I ended up doing that for 5 years. I moved every 3 months, 3 to 4 months around the country. And
so what I know about you now, 5 years of traveling, you said? Mm-hmm. So now I know, like, I can ask to borrow some money.
Well, so the other part of that is that while I did make money doing travel nursing, I also spent a lot of money traveling the world at the same time.
All right. So you were doing like a job and then travel?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So because when you're a travel nurse, you're basically like 13-week contracts, right? And then you're free. And so I would spend that time. I mean, I visited Thailand and Kenya and backpacked through Italy and, just lived in Guatemala for, a month. And
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I've done some amazing things, but it was very costly. So, so no money left over. But
you took things that, I mean, I talked about this with one of our guests. I never traveled until probably the last couple of years. And I always thought, like, I'll sleep when I die, and I don't need to travel. I got work to do. But once I did it, I really want to go more. I want to go see places. I want to meet people, see different cultures. So that's awesome that you got to do that.
Yeah, once you get bit by that travel bug, it's pretty hard to.
Yeah. Let me ask a question. I mean, your friend told you that it's too dangerous.
No, that was my sister.
Oh, your sister.
My sister told me being a cop was too dangerous.
Yeah. But what is it like? So was that like from childhood you wanted to be a police officer?
Yeah.
And what was it? Was it that you wanted to fight crime? Was it that you wanted to protect people? Was it, what drove you to that? Why did you want to be a police officer?
You know what? I think maybe it was taking care of people, but I think it was just like I wanted specifically to be a detective.
Okay.
And I think maybe it's just because I'm like so inquisitive and I just I'm always like questioning. And you can ask my husband now. He's like, oh my God, you asked too many questions. Does
it translate well though, that same to being a nurse, like the level of questioning and the level
100%.
of data you need to make good decisions, right?
Yeah. Because it's all critical thinking.
Yeah.
And it's nursing is like we talk about like textbook nursing versus real world nursing. And it's very, very different.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to think on your feet and critical think and outside the box and, do all those things. And so I did actually look into forensic nursing at one point.
Okay.
Which is a thing, but it ended up not being for me. But
I wonder why. Is there like a lot of gross stuff that you got to do as a forensic?
Surprisingly, that's kind of the part that I wanted. Surprisingly, it's actually just doing a lot of like you work in the ER, and then when someone comes in, maybe like a woman has been taken advantage of, then they do like certain kits and stuff like that.
Yes.
So it was just kind of like I didn't want to be an ER nurse. I just don't feel like I have that personality, and so so I was just like, okay, that's not for me. But yeah, traveling was amazing, and I think getting to see all of the different cultures, and all the way that like people handle different situations, right? And so I love that, like, I could take a piece of that with me, and actually, if you see a tattoo on my body, it's generally from somewhere that I've traveled.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was my souvenir that I took.
Well, you traveled a lot, so I'm guessing you have a lot.
Yeah.
We like tattoos here. Don't worry.
Yeah. I'm obsessed with them, but only if it has like a very like important meaning. You know, like I don't just put anything on me. But
shout out to our buddy Marvin Rivera. We did a podcast about tattoos, and it's so crazy that the conversation that we had actually triggered a pretty well-known nephrologist to comment in about the way that he dealt with empathy, because as you talk about the meaning of tattoos for you and travel, and and there's typically a lot of meaning behind people's tattoos, unless they go in and pull the little thing and get the little
or
ball.
It's Friday the 13th and they give you $13.
Right, let's just go get something, right? But he talked about like kind of memorializing life in specific, and the way that he sometimes doesn't know what to say, and he'll just stay quiet. And that he felt that like so honored to be able to be there with them in that moment, though, as they're getting the tattoo, memorializing it, something that really like kept them a lot of time with hope, or with sight on what was so important to them. So like I totally appreciate the meaning behind tattoos, and I got a lot of them too. Yeah. So tell me about the specialties that you did while you were traveling. You mentioned cardiac.
Oh,
right.
Yeah.
And then what did you do when you're traveling?
It's crazy because they throw you into everything.
Okay.
Like they literally like you're an extra body. So I did ER, I did ICU, I did cardiac ICU, I did med surg, I did neuro. I even did a little stint in OB. Okay. They called me and they were like, "Hey, we need you to float to this department." And I was like, "You guys, like, I only do adults. Like, I don't know what to do with babies." Like, and so
except for cuddle them.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Which I'm very, very good at.
Yeah.
And so they're like, "No, you take care of like the not the C-section, like the women who have a hysterectomy, because they kept them on that floor too."
Okay. Yeah.
And then they're like, "And then you do moms and we'll do the babies." And I was like, "Okay." So I'm in there telling these women, like, she's like, "What do I do if I'm, like, I need to produce more milk?" And I'm like, "Well, and like let's try eating oatmeal and doing, and all those things."
Were you making this up, or
100%?
Okay,
well, not making it up, but like just pulling from my personal
wasn't the
experience.
Like super confident, like this is the formula?
Yeah. Well, I was confident to them, but I literally like walked out of the room and went to the nurse and was like, "Hey, I told her this and this and this," and she was like,
good.
"Oh, actually, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, good." So I have 4 sisters, and so and one of them, she's 8 years younger than me, so I was 8 years old, so I kind of got to experience like her birth and her all like growing up. And then all my sisters have babies, and we all lived a street away from each other in that small town for a while. And so so I helped raise a lot of my nephews and nieces.
Gotcha.
I have like 15 now. So so I'm like, I knew some things, but I was just kind of like, winging it.
I mean, that's interesting. Just thinking about traveling nurse, right? And I've seen it in the dialysis space a lot, because that's where I really focus almost all my time. Travelers from one clinic to the other, and just kind of the same, like, it's not my normal thing. Well, it's a different clinic. It's not my normal thing. It's a different people that I'm working with that I've been spending the last 13 weeks with, right? Patients and staff. How much of it do you think is kind of like winging it, and how important is it for travelers, like nurses, techs, to actually have a higher level of, I don't know if you'd call it like social, emotional intelligence, to be able to like present confidently in front of a patient, give solid foundational knowledge, and then have the wherewithal to go back and check and make sure that they didn't miss, or that they didn't misstate anything, or people just going out there and doing it. And
so I think when you think about like dialysis or ultrasound, those kinds of travelers, it's a little bit more monotonous, right? So besides like not knowing where the supplies are, like it's kind of, like I wouldn't feel scared with a traveler dialysis tech, right? Because it's pretty much like very routine. When you're in the hospital, you have to, as a traveler, you really have to have a certain kind of mentality, like you said. Like, you have to be confident. You have to kind of like fake it until you make it. And you just have to be really set in your nursing practice.
Yeah.
Because there are people who will come up to you and say, like, well, you don't know what you're talking about because you're a traveler. And you have to be able to back that up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like, I can't tell you how many hours I spent like looking for supplies, but when, like in different hospitals, but when it came down to it, a patient with congestive heart failure is a patient with congestive heart failure.
Right.
You have different doctors, different personalities that you have to deal with. But I always told people who asked me about traveling, be secure in your nursing practice first. Be very like secure. Like I would not recommend being a nurse for any like less than 4 years before you go into traveling.
Well, I'm glad you said that. Social media, we're talking about social media and the way that people get information these days, right? And maybe I'm getting old and biased, but I kind of see a lot of the social promotion of nursing to be very like get to the top dollar before you get that foundation or before you get that seasoning. It's like finish nursing school and you're going to be all the way at the top right from the get-go. And a lot of people are going to do that through taking traveling assignments. I've seen it in the businesses that I own, that people very quickly get offers for traveling. They take them and, knock on wood, I haven't heard any horror stories from our pupils, but I have been out in the field and I see, travelers, and there's a big delta on consistency, on the ability, the skill set, like you said, how set are they in their ways, right? How much foundation do they have?
Yeah. I actually prefer travelers. Like if someone's taking care of me, because they're so, like, you can throw them into the fire and they know exactly what to do.
Right? They feel like they're an ICU nurse then.
Yeah.
And a traveler's like an ICU nurse that, hey, doc, just stand in the the corner. I got this, right?
And not all companies are like morally, like good at hiring people who already have experience and like vetting them out.
Yeah.
I happened to, be employed by one that was amazing, and I stayed with them the entire time. And they wouldn't even accept people's applications that were under a year.
As travelers.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, you have other companies that were
the travel agency, I guess.
That just wanted to make money. Yeah. The travel agency.
Yeah. Yeah. Gotcha.
That just wanted to make money. And so, I've seen some travelers who I'm like, that's terrifying. You have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah.
But they're really easy to point out. They're really easy to find. Yeah. But I feel like for the most of the time, when I see a traveler, they know their stuff.
So I'm going to give a converse to that. I agree with that. And I want to ask the question, I guess, on the other end of it. I've been in situations where I was the consult for the company for deficiencies. And because of the state we're in today, with multiple deficiencies and having to write out plans of corrections, they end up with like quarterly audits, right? Third party, which we've been able to provide. We'll go there one quarter, we'll do observation, statement of deficiency, find the problems, work with the staff that are there, in service, boom, boom, get it looking good before we leave, right? The next time we come back, it's a completely different staff.
Yeah.
And the same deficiencies that they were in this situation for are there still. So it's like, fixed and back to the problem. So I guess the lens I'd like to get from you is in those situations, well, I guess, how do you avoid that?
I mean, first of all, as a traveler, I think that I got embedded the information in me, like, because how there's usually some computer learning that you have to do at any healthcare establishment you go to.
Yep.
There's online modules.
Talking about like the learning management systems. Yeah.
And I did those every 3 months.
Okay.
So you better believe that I was the person that they sent state to when they had to interview someone about, because I knew it all.
Yeah.
Because I do, like, I literally had to learn it every 3 months.
Yeah.
And sit through and
For
I knew
every
all
new
the
assignment.
questions,
Yeah.
every single new assignment.
Yeah.
So
I guess that's a good lens. Yes. When
Yeah.
you travel, you do have to renew the competency for each facility every
single
single
one.
time.
Yeah.
So that's a good point.
And so I feel like we knew like policies and stuff better than anybody. But I think honestly, it's just management. I think it really, like, when it comes down to it, when you have somebody that comes into your unit, you have to set an expectation.
Yeah.
And even travelers can leave, right?
Yeah.
And say like, hey, I'm not willing to live up to that expectation. I've had tons of traveler friends who have been like, you know what, that wasn't for me. I lasted 2 weeks and then I left.
Yeah. They left their assignments.
Yeah. And so there is a little bit less of, I feel like, attachment. And so it's a little bit easier to leave. But for the most part, I mean, I feel like, at least speaking for myself, like I know all of those like the back of my hand. Yeah, even still.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, 5 years of traveling, what's next?
So I decide that I wanted to settle down. I have always wanted to live in LA since I was a kid.
Where you grew up in Arizona?
Uh-huh.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
in Prescott.
all right. So I got to ask why LA then. I mean, I grew up here. I love it. But like some people would be like, what?
I know. So we actually, so my dad is an immigrant from Mexico.
Okay.
And so as his family was crossing the border, they came into California, and they were working in the fields and doing all that stuff. Well, my family started off in California, and then he moved us to Arizona.
Okay.
So a lot of my aunts and uncles, my tios, they all lived here in California. And so we would come and visit. And actually my abuelita, my grandma, she worked at one of the Disneyland hotels.
Oh, all right.
So she would get us Disneyland tickets.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember having like a Daisy Duck hat that I was like obsessed with. It had the eyelashes, And I just remember like coming to the beach and getting to go to Disneyland. And it was every little girl's like,
I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't. I don't know what to say. My wife and my son, they had like these annual passes, and it was like a big deal. It's like, come with. I'm like, no, like I can't do it. Like, yeah, a lot of people.
not
love
a Disney
Disneyland.
person.
No, I'm not. Like,
Okay,
I'm
I
not
have to go. No.
Sorry, I'm not. Hey, amusement parks or they're. So I just started traveling. We got to graduate to like smaller things like amusement parks, but it's not my thing. Like I said about sleeping, I feel like I got work to do when I'm at. So every time I've gone to an amusement park in the last probably 15, maybe 20 years, it's been like, okay, let's go. It's like, wait, what did we spend the money for?
Did you grow up going to Disneyland?
I guess when really young, and like Magic Mountain and Knott's Berry Farm, because that's really local
Those
to here.
don't count.
But yeah, I know Disneyland's got a special place and the clubs and special restaurants, and I think they even got speakeasy, right?
Yeah, but that's like so hard to get into.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like really hard.
Yeah.
You have to have like $1 billion. I think for me, and I've had to explain this before, is that Disneyland isn't just like a fun place to go. It was like years of childhood memories.
Yeah.
Right? It was believing that I was a princess, right? It was watching all the movies, because that's like all we had in our house.
Yeah.
Watching all the movies and then getting to like go there and see it, right? So for me, there's a lot of nostalgia attached to it.
Yeah.
So it's not just like when I go to Magic Mountain or any of those,
right,
I'm like,
yeah, gotcha.
same, where I'm just like, okay, like not a big deal. Like even Universal Studios, like somebody like invited me to go and I'm like, nah, I'm good.
So it's like the taste of cooking and the smell of cooking for you is like Disneyland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
And I was like obsessed with it when I was a teenager. Like literally, like I read all the books. I know about all of like the court cases that were like, okay, I was like obsessed with it for a while.
Yeah.
So, so eventually I was like, and I don't know, I had this obsession with moving to LA. I think it was like I was in a small town and I just was like, this is not me. Like my personality, my everything was bigger than that. And so it was like, where else than LA,
Yeah.
And
no, I'm not mad at you at all. I mean, like, I'll never, I don't know, the more I travel, the more I start to be like, well, maybe
never say never.
Maybe I'd go out of the country. Like, when I went to Europe, I was like, holy crap. Like, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I was just like, holy shit, like, this is incredible. And when we went to the Philippines recently, I was blown away by, one, cost of living and the culture and personalities and hospitality and stuff. So, get it.
That's amazing. Yeah.
But
so
LA's great.
Yeah. So I, and I had a lot of anxiety about putting roots down because I did find like this liberty and this, this freedom in traveling and of getting up and going and reinventing myself every 3 months. Right. I was going through a lot because I was going through a divorce and, all these things. And so, I was like really depressed in one city. And then 3 months, I was like, whew, that was rough. Okay, time to pick myself back up, right? Like reinvent myself.
Go to Austin and like party, have the music.
So every 3 months I got to like try again, And so I came to LA. I, of course, loved it. And I was like, let me just make sure. So I left for a couple years traveling. And then I came back and I was like,
you were missing it already. All right.
Yeah. So I decided I wanted to settle down. And when I signed a year lease on an apartment, let me just tell you, I had like an anxiety attack. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah, the rate or the rent?
the
or just laying down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Like being stuck and being like, oh my God, I have to live here.
How long was the lease or the rent?
A year.
Oh, yeah.
But that was 9 months too long for me.
Okay.
So I had to bring myself into a place because I was like, I can't let this stop me. So how do I reframe my mind to accept this? And so the way I did that was I said, okay, it's not that you can't leave. You're just going to have to pay money if you want to leave.
Yeah. So then, there's a penalty.
Right. So then I was like, okay, I can do this. I can sign a lease because all that's going to happen is I'll have to pay him money. So that's okay. So then that was my rationale to be able to kind of like, put down roots. And so I knew that at that point, I had worked at this hospital where it was a really rough unit. And the last day that I was there, I watched another nurse kill my patient in front of me.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And she just went in there and was like, why are you have all these vasopressors? And she's like, the blood pressure's high. And I was like, well, hold on. I was like, let me explain to you why I've spent all night fighting with the vasopressors and her blood pressure. And she didn't listen to me, and she went and turned all the pumps off.
Oh, God.
And within 15, 20 minutes, the patient was dead from dropping blood pressure. And I went home, and I called my recruiter, and because I had one shift left at that place. And this was, I'm telling you, 3 months worth of this stuff where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And so I went home, and I called her crying, and I said, I cannot watch them kill another one of my patients. Like, I cannot go back. And the shift of care in the hospitals started to change. It was becoming more like client focused instead of like, let's help these people, right? It was more like, make sure you fluff their pillows so they give us good scores.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter as much if you save their life. So for me, I was losing like that like piece that made me really want to be a nurse and to help people, is because people weren't allowing me to help them.
No.
And so I was like, what else can I do? And I had always been intrigued with dialysis. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to see what it's about. Yeah. And so that's where I started my dialysis career.
In hospitals?
No, in
chronic centers. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know that you've got a great passion for the patient with kidney disease, as do I. Thinking about travelers, the state of healthcare today, what's missing from that level of care? Let's start there. like technicians, what's missing or what could be augmented or enhanced with their education today, their ability to be that critical thinker in the case of travel, or not just travel anymore, because when I think about some of the big dialysis companies, they kind of think about their workforce as a region versus like a home clinic in some cases. So
Yeah.
I see a lot of my students when they come out of school, they're like, well, today I'm working here, tomorrow or Wednesday I'm working over here, Friday I'm working at a different clinic. So they kind of get exposed to that need to, I don't would you say, fake it till you make it, or
Yeah.
kind of just, bring enough confidence to say that I know what I'm doing and I'm comfortable, set in my way to where you can trust me, sir. You can trust me, ma'am. Like
Yeah.
I'm new, but I'm not new. Right?
That's confidence. And I think that maybe something that we could do better to set up any healthcare professional is not just training on like, hey, this is a kidney. This is, if it doesn't work, this is the machine. But how to really like talk to people and how to maybe have some kind of like professionalism course or, you know what I mean? Because the expectation for technicians is to be a healthcare professional.
Yeah.
But these are people that are coming out of high school that take, what'd you say, 4 months? You were in
4 to 6 months of class.
And even some people it's less, right? In some
they get plug and play basically.
Yeah.
Hey, you're hired, let's start.
Yeah.
We'll train on the job in many of the cases, right? Yeah.
And so I think like one of the pieces that we're missing is like that professionalism piece.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, okay, well, we have nurses who go to school for 2 to 4 years and we have all kinds of courses,
That's right? Yeah.
And you have the doctors that work with them. You have certified dietitians, registered dietitians. You have, the social workers that are school way more than.
Yeah. I always say besides the doctor, they're the most educated on the team, right?
And so, and then we're throwing these kids into these situations. And granted, they're not always kids, but they're also not always as exposed to that level of professionalism that we're expecting from them.
Yeah. I got to ask, because you touched on something, it's kind of fresh on my mind. Like becoming a certified hemodialysis technician is like a trade, right? A certification, a vocational program, if you go to school for it. If you get trained in a clinic, it's just like it's an approved program.
Right.
You get certified and you become a professional that way, right? But when I think about like the gaps in technician understanding of things, and some of it is like age and experience in life. What about the other side? Because I do actually see quite a few people that are wanting to come into the industry that are mature in years and looking to serve, looking to care for people, and they've got the stuff that you are mentioning. How do you feel that like the industry, when I say the industry, the people that are out there on the floor, the techs and the nurses, how do you feel they respond to like the delta on age as an entry into dialysis? So, a 20-year-old kid coming in, it's easy to kind of like, hey, come on, do what I say.
Yeah.
Right? Versus, let's say, 55-year-old comes in. Like, how do you think the industry, and maybe you don't have an answer for this, but maybe hypothetically, how do you think the line is going to respond to somebody with that level of maturity coming in?
I think you can speak about that across all kinds of
Absolutely
of industries, right? Because when you get a nurse that walks in and she's 65 years old and looking or whatever, and she comes in and she starts caring for you, your automatic reaction is like, oh, good, she's been a nurse for a long time.
Right.
Right? And then you get me who walks in and I'm like, hey, and I look younger.
Yeah.
And you're thinking like, does this girl know what she's doing?
Right.
When really...
Two sides to the spectrum for sure. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I've been a nurse for over 15 years and maybe she's been a nurse for 6 months.
Yeah.
I think it's natural for us to, as humans, to think that the older you look, the wiser you are.
It's crazy.
And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah.
But not always.
Mm-hmm.
So I try really hard to not judge books by the covers, and to also,
Ringing bells from the weekend for me.
Yeah.
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 And so, yeah, absolutely. Right. It's
Yeah.
all about, and so for me, I try to look a little bit more past that and not just assume, because I went into nursing school right out of high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't even tell you, even to this day, people are like, you don't look like you've been a nurse for that long.
Right.
Right. Which, like, thank you. But also, it's like, and actually, this is funny because I didn't get my bachelor's degree for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've literally only had it for a couple of years.
Okay.
Because I was so, and you can ask anybody that knows me, I was on a soapbox about it for over 10 years. I'm like, I have the experience, right? So if you want to hire a brand new person right out of school that doesn't know anything, doesn't have any experience,
But has the degree
over me, who's a ICU nurse, who's done all these things,
Yeah.
who has helped do things maybe I shouldn't, like put in balloon pumps and things,
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, go ahead. Like, you deserve whatever's going to happen from that.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And I just was like, no, I will never get my bachelor's degree. Like, I was just like, my experience is worth more than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, well, anyway, they ended up getting me in the end because I wanted to go into management.
So it was a
eventually.
requirement for management. That really resonates with me. When I met Paco 15 years ago, I had a bachelor's in business administration, and to tell you the truth, it was a joke because I went to school to go to school and be around people. Like, I was at that age, right? I started a business which is approved through the Department of Public Health and really requires a nurse behind it, right? I hired a nurse. So I'm not the nurse.
Yeah.
I hired a nurse to take that spot, right? I hired other people as well, but I was on the same path as, like, I don't want to be a nurse. A lot of people told me, you can't start a school, you can't be who you are because you're just a technician. That's what they told me. Mm-hmm. And I'll admit that there was a point where I was like, maybe I should just go become a nurse to appease that because I want to be in this business, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, but then that's like really wasting the service time, right? Like, nurses have to go take care of patients as part of your training, right? Mm-hmm. That's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Like, I knew that I was going to be in education, admin, and then into the medical device world, right? So that's not what I wanted to do. And I fought it for a long time like you, and I kept getting told that I already started the business, but I couldn't sit at certain tables.
Yeah.
And it really pisses me off that I went to school just to sit at those tables, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I don't regret going back to school. I got a master's in health administration and education, but I don't regret it. But it really was just to be able to appease, and
Yeah.
in hindsight, like, how often do I use my MHA title or, never.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot of good stuff in the process. So I'm sure that in the bachelor's studies as well, you picked up some stuff, right?
And I did, like, I actually went through an accelerated course.
Okay.
And I did my entire bachelor's degree in 12 weeks.
Oh, what the?
I know.
Oh my God! So did you pay like $300,000 for this or something? Like,
no, it was actually the cheapest program.
All right, I'm not going to ask because I know it's going to make me.
You don't want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I worked full time, and I told my husband, I said, I will be unavailable for the next 12 weeks. Like, I will get this done in 12 weeks.
Yeah, that's your normal.
Yeah.
Cadence of bubbling up, anyways, right?
Right.
Like 13 weeks. Yeah.
And so I just literally would just work. I would come home, and I wouldn't nothing. I would put my bag down, pull out my laptop, open it up, and start on homework. And I would do that until probably 3 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. I'd usually fall asleep while I was doing that, and then I'd wake up at 6 o'clock and go back to work. And the only person who knew. The only people who know about that is my mom, my husband, and my sisters. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my mom was like, why don't you, like, tell her you have your bachelor's degree? And I'm like, because I'm so pissed that I had to get it.
Yeah. So same thing, like what I was saying, right? Yeah. Just appeasing the critics, right?
And I love my mom. My mom's she's the best. And she got me like this little like, poster thing. And she got me a jacket that has my name and my BSN on it. And I was just like, Mom, stop.
So let me ask you, as a leader in healthcare, now putting the lens on other people that are running through, let's say they're, I'll go back to technicians, okay? They're a technician in California. They took this test that is like through this the state agency, right? Mm-hmm. To get certified in California. Or maybe they hold the national certification. Do you like look at them different?
So let me ask you this. When you hire someone, do you look at their high school GPA?
No. Okay, that's great. And what I expected, but now let's go to the nurses. Do you look at an ADN, a BSN, an MSN differently as a healthcare leader, and then the multiple lines that you have to fulfill? Do you look at them differently?
Not really.
No. So you look at experience.
And Ps, yeah, because they
provide
they have a
Yeah.
But no, like we don't walk around with badges that say, like it doesn't. For me, it's not about like, because I went to nursing school with somebody that was, oh my God, she was so smart, so smart, aced everything. Like she was the first one to answer. It was like one of those like let somebody else answer type of a thing. You know what I mean? And she was a really rough nurse. So for me, I don't think it's as much the letters behind your name as prove it to me.
No, I 100% agree with that. And I've fought the battle of, just like you have, of kind of taking the soapbox and, I stand on business, right? Like watch what I've done on time, every time, performance, the reviews of the people I've worked with, and meaning patients and the facilities or the consults that I've done. Right? I like to stand on that. But as I've grown as well, like I've actually got a stupid amount of letters next to my name from the certifications and stuff. I'm curious about nephrology nurses. So you just need to be an RN. You can be an ADN, a BSN, an MSN. You just need to be an RN, right, to take care of people on dialysis. What about the certifications? Certified nephrology nurse, certified dialysis nurse. Have you worked with many? Are you certified?
No.
Do you see any value, or I'm sure there's value, but do you see any differentiator in those sort of certifications?
It's interesting because I don't see a lot of push for it.
No, not at all. It's not a requirement. So.
No, if you have it, it's because you just want it.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, there's no differentiation.
None. Yeah.
Like, unless you came up and told me, hey, I'm certified, I'd be like, okay. Like, because we are all given the same amount. Now, I think that being certified in specialties is a huge plus.
Yeah. Yeah,
because you learn so much, not just beyond, hey, put on a patient, take off a patient. Like, you learn, like, everything about the reasons why everything's happening. So it gives you the ability to critically think and to troubleshoot so much better.
Yeah, agreed.
But then you just think, oh, that nurse is a really good nurse.
Right. What I always think about it from the patient lens, and it's like, if I was a dialysis patient and then I have this nephrologist, right? And then I got this renal dietitian, right? And then I got this social worker that's licensed and focused on that. I guess they're not specialty, right? But then even the dialysis tech is, I when I see like a nurse with a certification, it makes me go like, oh, you're a dialysis nurse. That's the way I feel like I would, if I was sitting in that chair, that I'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. They're a specialist, I'm an advocate of certification. I mean, obviously, because as a technician, I had to be. But I've served on boards that are part of the professional certifying agencies, and I see a lot of value in it, just in that. But like you said, I think the people who get certified, it's kind of like when we go to the professional conferences, right? Like, who do you see there? Like, people who, like, they really give a shit. You know what I mean? Like,
or they need CEUs.
So I got a friend. I'll shout out to Andy Veilkamp. He says that a lot of the companies are pretending like it's an incentive to send the people to the shows, but really it's just keeping them licensed or certified. Like you said, needing continuing education, CE, right? Which is it's really important.
But there's so much value in that because you are learning, right? There is stuff like when I go to those, I'm like, oh man, and then it like gets you fired up and you want to take that back.
Well, that's the purpose of it, right? Is like, I mean, a lot of us grew up in the dialysis space in kind of bubbles of organizations to where we don't know what everybody else does.
Yeah.
And especially like the academic institutions, they're really good at sharing best practice, stuff we would never hear if we didn't attend those, right? So I agree. That got super high value.
Yeah.
So, I love the passion that you have for the dialysis patients, for nursing as a whole. I'd like to learn, kind of slip over into the entrepreneurial side. And that's always really interesting to me. Like, Paco's going to make a comment right now. But so when I used to go to the gym a lot, I used to tell him, like, put a whiteboard in the gym. Like, let's like talk business in between sets, right? Because like I was like always talking. I got a good friend. He was there this weekend, Dominic. We talked about he has a flex space, right? But we'd be working out, and then I'd be like, oh, this is a good idea for a business, and this is how you monetize it, and blah 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 blah, and you got to have these financials. So I love talking business. I love talking business because typically entrepreneurs have like really a personal reason behind why they start the businesses. And when you talk to these people, like beyond great business ideas, you see the passion that drives impactful and meaningful purposes, right? So I'm interested to hear, can you tell me about the initiative that you've taken to celebrate life? You've started a company. What's it all about? Where did it come from?
Yeah. So, I feel like I've always like known that there was like before I knew what entrepreneurship was, I think that spirit like always lived in me. And I always felt like there's something a little bit more that I haven't quite tapped into yet. And this for me is what I feel like it is. And so, I was never supposed to, I was never supposed to be able to have kids. And, I can't even tell you, I mean, I didn't get pregnant until 2021. And so I had, whatever PCOS and, all these things where they said, the doctors always told me you're probably going to have IVF if you want to have any kids. And so obviously that was devastating for me because I think for me, like I've always felt like being a mom was my purpose in life. And so, I always dreamed of having like a big family. And so, so that was also like something that was really, really, really hard for me. And so, I am with, I had been done traveling. I was working dialysis, and then I reconnected with my husband, my now husband. We hadn't talked in 8 years. We actually met back in Prescott. He was a
Prescott.
Yeah. He was a phlebotomist at the hospital that I worked at, and I was married at the time, and so it was like no.
Yeah.
And so he kind of tracked me down, and we started talking, and I had told him everything that had happened, and so we kind of like reconnected, got back together, and then I one day found out I was pregnant, and it was actually ridiculous the way I found out, but I thought I had a big cyst, and I was like getting sick, and I was like, oh, it hurt. It was so much pain, and then I was like throwing up. And he was like, my husband was like, that's it. Like, I don't know if you know, nurses don't go to the hospital. Like, nurses do not seek
they diagnose any kind 5 times before they go.
Yes. Yeah. We do not seek any kind of medical care at all.
Yeah.
And so he had to like take me kicking and screaming. And I was like, fine, I'm going to go. But they're just going to tell me what I already know. And now I'm going to pay a bunch of money for them to do it. And I was pissed. And it was during COVID. He couldn't go in. He couldn't go in with me. I was just whatever. So they come in and they said, you're right. It does look like you have a cyst. And they said, and we were going to give you pain medication, but since your pregnancy test came back positive, it changes our plan. And I was like, no. And they were like, no, your pregnancy test came back positive. And I said, no. I said, that's not possible. And they were like, oh, why not? Like that. And I just said, and I was like, that's not possible. And then I just started like bawling, and they were like, what is wrong with you? They're like, are you okay? And so all the happiness ensued, right? I told my husband, and everything was happy, and we had a gender reveal party, and it's a boy, and everything's going perfect. Like literally, they were like, you have had a perfect pregnancy. And I was considered high risk because I was going to birth after I was 35.
Okay.
So they sent me to multiple doctor's appointments, ultrasounds, all these things. Everything's perfect. Then I was almost 8 months pregnant, and I was at work, and I had a very stressful job. And I came in, and I just remember being like, oh, he's got his head in a weird place. Like, this is not right. And then I mentioned to one of my coworkers, I said, he feels like, I feel like just like a little crampy or something. And she said, be careful, because that's what one of our other coworkers said. She said when she went into labor. And I was like, So then I called my doctor. He was on lunch. And so she's like, he'll call you back later. And so they called me back and said, you know what? He said to go ahead and come in and get checked. And so I was like, okay. So I went to go write something down for the next shift, before I left. And I just feel this like gush.
Okay.
And I literally like out loud said, that's not good. Because it was either my water or it was blood, and not good in either situation.
Yeah.
So I went to the bathroom. Sure enough, just blood.
Oh, no.
So I grabbed a bunch of chucks. As I was like going by, I told one of the nurses, I have to go, whatever. And I drove myself to the hospital. And the whole time I'm on the phone with my husband, and he's, understandably like flipping out. Yeah. And so anyway, made it to the hospital. They told me what I already knew. They're like, there's no heartbeat. And so they said, now we have to save mom. And so I was hemorrhaging. I was
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So I had to get several units of blood, and they didn't really even give me a choice. I just got an epidural, because I was like, it was the most craziest pain I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah.
And I just remember being a healthcare worker. I remember hearing the inflection of the voices change in the nurses.
Yeah.
At certain times, when then I started being like, oh crap, this is, they were like, okay, her lips are blue, and then they would start rushing. And then I was like, oh, I know what that means. And then I would get and so add anxiety and on top of grief and whatever else was going on. And I literally felt like I was dying. I remember telling the nurse, help me. I just kept saying help me. I don't feel good. And so, eventually, Richard, my husband, he got there, and, they moved us into this other room, and they finally got the bleeding under control. And, they told me, now that you're out of the danger zone, they said that the best way to do this is for you to birth him naturally instead of doing a C-section. And so I did that. And so I was in labor for 2 days, and
oh my goodness.
And ended up having a beautiful baby boy, just amazing. He was a ginormous for big chubby cheeks, just amazing.
Oh, I met your husband. He's
yeah,
and you're tall yourself.
Yeah, I mean, you could there was no denying that was his child, right? He had his ears, his forehead, everything. And so so I was just kind of thrown into this this interesting world of death that I had never really experienced like that before.
Yeah.
I can say that I was very fortunate. I never had anybody that was really close to me die
Okay.
that I was like that heartbroken. You know, like how some people have like a mom or dad that dies, or like a grandparent that raised them.
Yeah.
Like I'm fortunate enough that like, you know, most of those people are all still alive, or my grandparents, while they're not, like I wasn't super close with them.
Gotcha.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I hadn't ever had like that kind of like wrenching.
Massive loss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for it to be like this child that I had wanted my entire life.
Yeah.
And so it made me completely like change my entire viewpoint on death. I would say that before I was very, like most people in our culture, very death avoidant.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, even though I was a nurse, and I think maybe that made me a little bit more like immune to it.
Right.
Like I was just kind of, and people asked me all the time, like, how are you still calm? You know, like that person just died. And I'm like, yes. And while it's sad, you know, I did everything that I could as a nurse, and, you know, and so I think I saw it like maybe a little bit more objectively.
Yeah.
And so, I had to just like come to terms with this and completely different viewpoint of death. Right.
Yeah.
And like, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it also made me, feel like no matter how old someone is. So like, I feel like my son impacted the world in a big way for how like small he was. Right. Like I have so many people that just loved him like crazy, right? Without ever even meeting him.
Yeah.
And he's, you know, done like through me, like he's already, I've done so many things with other, like agencies and things, on his behalf that have changed people's lives.
Yeah.
You know? And so, so then I was like, no matter how long you live, like it should be celebrated. So I actually, I looked into, having a celebration of life for my son because he had so many fans. And online, there's nothing about having a celebration of life for an unborn baby.
Really?
Nothing. And it's all very hush hush. It's all very like, you know, you do this and then you don't talk about it. Right. And as we were getting this support, you know, after you join that club, you know, you start meeting all these people. And I had people that I knew forever that were like, oh, I have 2 angel babies. I have 5 angel babies. I have 7 angel babies. And I'm like, what? Like, why are we, you know, like, how do I not know that? Like, why is this not a conversation we're having? And, you know, partly it's because it's hard to talk about, right? It's an incredible loss.
Yeah.
But also there's just kind of like I don't know, there's like a stigma about it. Like people are like, well, you were only 8 weeks, you know, like, oh, you were only however far along.
Yeah.
Right. And I guess depending on your belief system, right? Maybe to you that means they have a heartbeat and they're a person, and maybe that means for you they're not. They're just tissue.
Right.
So there's that or whatever. But for me, I just felt like you know, like no matter how long your life is, it should be celebrated. And so so I looked into doing those like a celebration of life. Nobody had anything. Everything was like for kids, like pick their favorite colors and, you know, and so I decided, and so I had my son in November and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna do anything that seems extra. Well, come his due date, I just felt like, no, he's worth a celebration. And so I planned it, and I didn't know what I was doing because nobody had any kind of direction for me. I planned it. We had it on the beach, in like our favorite spot where we had his gender reveal. And, you know, we had family flew out, and we had this amazing gathering of people. And I had crazy sugar cravings when I was pregnant with him. And so we had donuts and milk and, like little candies and things that I thought he would like. And we had an amazing time. I got like these little water soluble papers, and we wrote notes to him and then put it in the ocean, and, different things. And so I did a blog on it about, my story, and that, like, it's okay to have a celebration of life for, for it doesn't matter how long. And so it wasn't until it was like a couple of years after that, because it took me a long time to get over that. Like, I was a little bit of a shell of a person for a while. I
can imagine.
And then I had seen a movie some years back where the main character has cancer, and she invites her friends to this thing, and they said, "What are we doing here?" And she's like, "This is my funeral." And they said, don't be morbid. And she's like, "No, I want to hear what you have to say." And so I think that movie, coupled with like this new newfound respect, or no, that's not the right word, but like this new
relationship
relationship with death, right? That's a good word. Is that I just came home one day and I was like, "Babe," I was like, "I think I want to start a business." And he was like, "Okay." And I was like, "What if we did funerals, but like while the person is still alive?"
Yep.
Right? And so I did some research on it. It's not really a thing. There's a couple of like little like hints of it here and there. And I've talked to some people who have said like, "Oh, like I know somebody who did something similar, but they just invited a bunch of people into their backyard." Yeah. And so for me, I was like, I feel like there has to be a healthier way for us to say goodbye to our loved ones. There has to be. And I have, being a nurse for so long, I have seen so many people die by themselves.
Yeah.
I have a specific patient that I think I was in Texas. No, I don't remember. But I remember her very well. She was dying, and I called the family, and I said, she was a DNR, so she was just on the medical, like the regular floor.
Yeah.
And I called the family, and I said, "Hey, like, you guys should probably come tonight." And they said, "Oh, we just can't see her that way. Just call us after."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. And I had heard stories about how amazing she was and all this. And then I was like, and then this is how she's going to go.
Yeah.
And so I was the one who I worked night shift. So I did my rounds, and then I told my nurse, my other coworkers, I said, "Hey, I'm going to go sit in room, whatever." And they were like, "Why?" And I said, "Because she's dying by herself." So I took my computer on wheels, and I sat next to her, and I remember just charting, right? Because you do all the things and then you sit and chart.
Yeah.
And I was charting, and I just remember her, like, every now and then she would, and I would say, "It's okay, Mom, I'm right here."
Yeah.
And I would tell her, like, your family loves you, and it's okay if you want to go, And I just remember all night just sitting next to her, and I just was like, this can't be the best way, for her to just like leave feeling so abandoned.
Yeah. I've got a little bit of experience in post-acute care, nursing homes, and I'm just having flashbacks right now as you're speaking through all this. We had I want to say 24 beds that were designated to hospice, palliative care, and it's leading me to all sort of questions and curiosities about what you're doing here. But there's like, I can remember a story, and I've told it before, but a guy who wanted to go to the beach, he was on hospice. He wanted to go to the beach, and it took a little bit of work to make this happen. But the day he went to the beach, he passed away.
Yeah.
I can think about people who have been waiting for somebody to let go, and very morbid thought. But this weekend you spent some time with me, right? And like, I'm 47, but I've got too many kids and grandkids already, so it makes me feel older than I am.
Yeah.
And I quite often think about passing, and I was like, after the short conversation we had about this, like I almost, I was like, well, that could have been my celebration, because I felt like I had all the reflections that I want to see. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's kind of the group that would probably, for the most part, be there on a passing, right? But it made me think about it, and is this something that could be covered through like a hospice benefit or a palliative care benefit, or is it something that more the family is doing on a private pay?
I have grand plans for this in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I've already planned it out to when it's like I have my own funeral section, everything, like
mm-hmm.
when it becomes more than just the celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
I would love for it to be covered someday.
Yeah.
As of right now, because it's, so new and it's such a new concept that it's just going to be private pay.
I mean, I could really see hospice companies taking to this, though. I mean, I know a lot of these people, right? And like differentiators, right? They provide chaplain, they provide, music therapy, pet therapy, aromatherapy, everything else, right? I don't know, pricing structures and things like this, but I could easily see this is part of like pre-bereavement. This is preparation, in some cases, like that event that's going to allow somebody to let go. So I don't know. I feel like even without reimbursement, that there's probably some sort of B2B relationship that you could be having with hospice companies.
Yeah.
They would be attracted to it.
Yeah. I mean, that's I would say is probably my main clientele is hospice, right?
Yeah.
Because who else knows when they're going to die?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And for me, I think of it as like getting the benefit of knowing when you're going to die.
Yeah.
Right. Because although obviously you're like, okay, well, I don't want to die. Well, none of us want to die, but we're all going to do it.
We're born to do it, right?
Yeah. But to do it on your own terms where you can like put everything, lay everything out, get everything ready, see all your friends, celebrate your life and the people that were in it and all those things.
Yeah.
That's a that's a blessing.
I mean, some people might ask, like you said, I've seen something like that before. I can do it, right? But I'm curious to kind of hear like the value proposition. Like you've been through this process, you've had that self-planning on your own. Like what's the value to people who are thinking about having celebrations of life for themselves or for others in taking on somebody like you? What's the personal touch? What's the white glove? What's the flavor that you bring to that whole experience?
Yeah. So I think the obvious part is that nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to plan out, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing is, when I think about my experience, is I remember being across the table from the person at the mortuary, and she said, well, what do you want? And I was like, I want my son. Like, what do you mean? Like, I don't know. Like, and she, it was kind of like, I've never done this before. Yeah. And so I think for me, like one of the values is that, that I have done it before, and that I have expertise in getting you through this. I have the empathy, of a nurse. Mm-hmm. I also have clinical things, right? So if your loved one is on oxygen, or if they need to get somewhere in a bed, or like I have that kind of information and training that I can get them there, when someone else would be like, oh no, I don't know, like
we can't get them,
they're in a wheelchair, like I don't know what to do with that, what I mean? Like it's okay, I've done that, like I know how to change a bed with a person in it, what I mean? Like just stuff like that. But also the personalization that I'm offering with my company is, I want it to be whatever you want it to be. Mm. I sit down and I write, tell me your story, like we're having right now, right? Like, tell me everything that's important to you. And then I'm going to put together a farewell for you that you're going to be like, oh my God, like, you know, I never thought I'd get to see that again, or, you know what I mean? And so when we look at like pricing, it's very like general at first, because do you just want to have a small get together at your house with your loved ones, and you want to have like a small, maybe like one person, a violinist?
Yeah.
That's going to be a lot cheaper than, hey, I want to go and have everybody jump out of a plane, you know, and, you know, do whatever.
So you concierge the whole thing then?
The whole thing from start to finish.
If I would compare this to like a wedding planner, like you don't got to go hire a florist, you don't got to hire a DJ,
Nope.
you don't got to, you know, get napkins and silverware.
So
like
I do
all of it.
I do all of that.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is tell me your story, right? You tell me who to invite. I'm going to invite everybody. I will even arrange flights if you need me to, right? If that's within your budget. So I'm going to do all of that so you don't have to. And then I'm going to think about the things that you're not going to think about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you never died before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
is it typically when you like kind of reflect that as you never, is it typically the person that's on hospice or that's in a terminal illness that's setting this up with you, or is it their family saying, hey, I want to do this for pops or mom or sister or whatever it is?
I would say that it's usually the family who initiates it. But then when I customize it, it's like, hey, what did you do as a kid? You know, what did you know, whatever. And if your last dying wish is like, you know what, I just can't stop thinking about this one pastry from this cafe in France, I will go and get it for you.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like, send me to France.
But you got to pay for it, right? So like, unfortunately, like that stuff is more costly.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's like, I want you and your loved ones to feel like this was the cap on an amazing life, right? And what it does also is it gives us, the people that are left behind, closure.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask that is, you know, the celebration of life. Yeah. That closure, does that bring that to the guest?
Yeah.
Like, do people no-show? You know, I'm just going to say this, like I invited 100%. A lot of people to that event this weekend.
Yeah.
Most no-showed.
Yeah. 100%, because there's, and until this becomes a culture shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of people that don't know how to deal with it.
Well, yeah, on that side, like even hospice, right? In our culture, in Philippine culture as well, it's quite often like we're not going hospice. Like that's accepting it, right?
Yeah.
And is that kind of something as far as that culture shift that you need is like celebrating this life is now accepting that it's coming to an end. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
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 100%. Because there's some people who are like, oh no, they're never going to die. You know? And it's like, they're literally like trached and pegged and like all this, and you're just like, you know, and they still want you to do compressions on a 98-year-old that's skin and bones.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, if we can. That long dialysis career for me, I've worked with a lot of patients that never see anybody except for certain times of the month, nursing homes as well.
Yeah.
They never see somebody until it's time, their check came around and they need to pass some money over, right? I've seen people, just like you said, that I've seen a patient that was brain dead, dialyzed for a year, and family was just refusing to let go. Now we can kind of assume why, never know why. It might be culture, it might be there's financial reasonings behind it, but have you seen that in your experience, that like people are kept breathing and heart pumping in all of your experiences for somebody else?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
More times than I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Than I want to even remember.
Yeah.
Like I've had to do compressions on people that I was like, oh God, this feels wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you're breaking the bones of this person, and it's just, you know, but at that point, the person that you knew them as is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So at that point, you're doing those things for the people who are watching you do.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Agreed.
so they have to see that. They have to see, and you know, maybe they'll regret it later. You know, maybe not. That's not for me to judge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your son's name?
Grayson. Grayson Myles. So actually, that's I kind of named the company after him. So Myles Beyond Celebration Services. So Myles Beyond for me means my son in heaven. But Myles Beyond for, like everything else, I think as a customer service aspect, it makes you feel like I'm going to go above and beyond for you, which is what I want to do. Like I put my heart and soul into everything that I do, probably more than I should. And if you ask my husband, 100%.
He's like, go to sleep, huh?
Yes. Like he literally will come out and be like, okay, close the laptop. Let's go to bed, And, I can't even tell you how many people I've said, like, fill your cup, because you can't fill, from an empty cup. But just my passion and my love for people is like, I don't know how to, like, I just have so much love in my heart and I just don't know what to do with it. And so sometimes like, this is how I do it. Right. Like, and I just feel like it also helps us as a culture to, like, we have so many issues with mental health and like all these things, right? That's like a whole nother podcast, right? And so it's like a lot of that comes from like, tragedies and people like leaving. But think if you could be the one to say like, or if you've ever gone to a funeral and you said like, oh my God, they would have loved this. Oh, I wish they could have heard that. Right. Or I wish I could have given them one last hug. I wish I could have just told them. And so what I'm doing is I'm offering you that experience, right? To kind of, it's going to be hard when they're gone because we're sad when people die when they're no longer with us. But you got to do those things, right? So you got to have a little bit of closure. So maybe it's not going to be so hard,
Just the stigma that you talked about, I'll admit that, I'm at the point in my life where I'm starting to see friends pass away, too early, obviously, but, starting to see friends pass away. I've had friends who have had children that have passed away, even in their teens. And I've got 4 kids. I've got 3 grandkids. Paco's got a football team. And it's the thing I have, like, probably the hardest time in knowing what to say, being able to be next to somebody, you know what I mean? And be by theirs. It's the one that I struggle with the most because it makes me take on the same, like I said, like, oh my God, like, what's that like? The bravery that you have to tell your story and then execute on what you've navigated so that others can navigate it and have a better experience. I think, it's truly inspiring. All the work that you've talked about and the Myles Beyond, I know that resonates with our audience because we've talked a lot of times about no matter what you're doing, like you said, everything you do, you put your all. Paco said it to us many times that the extra mile doesn't cost anything extra, right? And it's the true sign, I think, of a nurse. I think if you would have been a police officer, you would have been a wonderful police officer because of the level of thought and care that you have towards the community. But if I can reflect a little bit more, just in recent weeks, we've had some really great people cross through and I would just say since day number 1, but we kind of dialed into last week with Michelle Josue. She's the director of the Nurse Unseen documentary. Just the power of storytelling, right? And, I appreciate you telling your story tonight. I think that the story that you have and then the services that you're providing then tells that same story for those individuals that you're helping to celebrate life, which is awesome. And I've never thought about it that way as far as like, we get it at the funeral. And it's kind of like, well, a family gets together at funerals or weddings, right? This is a great opportunity, I think, for people to acknowledge life, to celebrate life, to get some help that if I'm the one sitting on the bed, and I've said this before, is I don't need to take anything. I don't need to leave anything behind.
Yeah.
So I'd rather spend some money on like having that time with the people I love, seeing the things, tasting, smelling, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm.
I love the analogy that you gave us, or the experience that you gave us of the sweets that you craved
Mm-hmm.
during that. And that was such a personal connection for that celebration for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that storytelling, I'm just becoming more and more convinced that the podcast here is a great platform for people to tell their stories, no matter what they are, dialysis related or not. But again, I love the connectivity that you have through your service to continue the story. Lastly, I want to thank you for coming in, sharing with us. Can you say one more time the name of your company for those that are still with us, and then those that will be watching the edited episode? How do they get a hold of you? Do you have a website? Is it social? Is it like what's the contact?
Yeah, so the business name is called Myles Beyond Celebration Services. So you can, and really for either my website or my Facebook or my Instagram, it's all just shortened a little bit. So Myles Beyond Celebrations.
Okay.
With an S at the end.
Okay.
So www.milesbeyondcelebrations.com, or you can find me the same name on Facebook, Instagram.
And it's MYLES.
MYLES.
MYLES. Yeah, great. Any last words of advice, whether it be to healthcare professionals, people who are needing care, or those that are at the point where, it's time to look back and reflect and celebrate people or ourselves?
I think for all of that, I would say just make sure that, that you don't have any regrets, right? So like if this is something you're like, oh, that sounds cool, but I don't know, just do it, right? Like this is your life. You only get one. And, these people that we're talking about, like they're lucky enough to know when they're going to pass, but most people aren't.
That's right. Can be taken just like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, on the way home today,
Yeah.
We have that chance every
Yep.
time we leave the house, or even sometimes in the house. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for me is like, that's why I think I love with so much passion, is because if I don't wake up tomorrow, I don't want anybody left feeling like
They didn't know. Mhm.
Yeah. And so that's why I'm so, like even if me and my husband get in an argument, I'm like, kiss me before you leave, because it could be the last time.
Yeah.
And it's not, I'm not trying to say that like in a morbid way, but just being grateful.
Yeah.
Like we recently went through like this grateful challenge too, where every day we listed 5 things that we're grateful for. And I think just having a heart of gratitude will change anybody.
100% agree with that. It's really easy to look at the negatives in life, the parts of the journey that are tough, but there's always some sort of uptick in our journey, right? That we can take and say, hey, I've got food today. I woke up today. I'm breathing today.
Yeah.
I have XYZ in my life still. I have memories of XYZ. We can be grateful for a lot, or we can be on the other side and really be a victim to life, right?
Yeah.
Which life is the son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Like it'll get you if you allow it, right?
But somebody told me once, they said, you have survived every single worst day of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're here.
That's right. You're still,
and
can
every
look back on it.
time that you feel like, I had another person tell me when I was in the throes of my grief from my son, she told me, if all you do today is breathe, you're winning.
That's right.
That's
Yeah.
all you have to do is just breathe,
So-
And so I was like, okay, I'm making it.
So let me ask a weird question, but I've heard another saying that's very similar. If you woke up and you're breathing, you're in good shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask, just last sentiment from you.
Yeah.
You woke up breathing in the United States of America. Any thoughts on that?
Of like how I feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, some people would say, hey, I woke up breathing in the United States. I'm not in
Yeah.
this place.
I would say that yes, it is a great privilege to live in a place where we have so many freedoms. Because there's other places where if you are, disabled, right, you get killed.
No.
So,
or you don't get access to care.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think that while America is a great place to wake up in, I think it's also a lot about perspective, because I've also seen
You've traveled
children in Kenya who have a bottle cap,
Yeah.
and they are so happy and
That's right.
content.
That's right.
And so I think no matter where we wake up, yes, we are absolutely like privileged and
Lens on light, like you said, gratitude,
and
right?
it really it depends on your outlook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was something I really noticed in the Philippines. I saw really, great areas and affluent houses and people. And then I saw really poor people. And I'll tell you the truth. Like, I met a kid at the gas station that, what do they call it? They work for syndicates or something like that.
Yeah.
They're like out there working.
Kids.
Huh? The little kids, yeah. But he was so cool, man. Like, when I gave him some money, he was like so grateful. But it's just a little bit. And yeah, lens on life is super, super important. Gosh, I had one other thought for you, and it slipped my mind. But again, thank you for joining us. What can we be looking out for as far as next move for you? Is it growth in that business? Is it growth in the healthcare sector? Like, what's the next exciting move for you? Is it 100% focus on Myles Beyond?
Yeah. So for me, that's where it is. And honestly, I think regardless of how my business goes, if I can change some people's minds about just celebrating and being happy, and because somebody told me, they're like, oh, you need to patent it so nobody else could do it. I was like, well, it's like patenting funeral homes.
Right.
Right? Like,
then you stop everybody else from...
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, it doesn't, like, I don't anticipate me to be the only one that's going to ever do this.
Yeah.
I just want to be the best at what I do.
I think that's the right way to this is a good it's a best practice, maybe. Hopefully it would become a best practice.
And that's what that's for me. Like, if I can change the world in that way, like, even if there's another business that's more successful than me, if that means that those people get to die happy, then that's it. That's it for me.
So it's a higher purpose.
Obviously, do I want my business to succeed, because I feel like I have the right pieces, the right compassion, and the right, like, somebody asked me once, like, about franchising it. And I was like, I said, I don't know, because it would be really easy to take advantage of this. And I'd have to find somebody that had the exact same heart as me. Yeah. Which is,
that really hits home for me as well with the business I own, like, being able to, I've had that as well. And it's like, are we going to be able to do the same thing? And you've been around, you've seen schools. I don't feel like I could do that without, I haven't found the right person yet.
Yeah.
That's going to be able to duplicate, like, purpose and meaning and the real impact that we're trying to have. I know what my question was, by the way. And maybe, I'm not sure, but I noticed your necklace. What is this?
Yeah. This has some of my son's ashes in it.
Okay. And I caught it as soon as you walked in.
Yeah.
I was curious if there was, so it's the ashes remains.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a whole ordeal. I actually I did it for my husband for Father's Day one year. And it was the most traumatic thing I've ever done. And I was like, I will never open that again. And it was awful. And so, we actually, it was on a longer chain, and my dog just broke the chain. And so I have it on the shorter one, but it's usually kind of like closer to my, my chest.
Yeah.
And sometimes, me and my husband will just, like, I feel like I need Grayson today, I feel like I need him, or, if he's going to go on a long, motorcycle ride, I'll give it to him. I'll give grace into him. So it's just like, it's our way of just kind of like keeping him close. And so it's very meaningful for me and him to kind of be able to like share that.
Yeah.
And
No, I thought that's what it was. I just wanted to confirm, very touching. And again, I cannot explain to you how special this has been to me. This is, I think, the height of vulnerability for me. I think about all the things we do as healthcare professionals, but talking on a personal level like this, like you've really given it to us all. Thankful for everybody who's joined us this evening. I hope that you've enjoyed the story, that you would support the business and the purpose behind Myles Beyond Celebrations. Sorry, one more time.
Myles Beyond Celebrations.
Celebrations, yeah. Myles Beyond Celebrations. And Paco, I know we got a recording, so we'll make sure we add the link within the description here. You've got an open seat with us, Janet. Would love to hear more stories. I didn't know your husband was a phlebotomist, so kind of curious to hear, like, if I saw, he's a big guy, man. Like, if he was going to grab my arm, I don't like getting blood drawn, but I might be just like, shut up.
Take it.
Yeah, do it, So yeah, you got an open seat here, and look forward to seeing the growth and the lives that you impact, not only through the healthcare and the nursing that you're doing, but through the passion project and the very personal project that you have going on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you soon, okay?
Okay.
And we'll be signing out from Musings with Morales. Have a good evening, everybody.
This episode has been brought to you by Dialysis Education Services.